Hi, and welcome back to the e-learning video series on BSF Biowaste Processing. This module in the BSF Business Development chapter focuses on the cost model. After watching this module, you'll be able to understand the user interface of the web-based cost model. You'll also be able to apply the values in designated input boxes in the model. And lastly, you'll be able to recognize the sources of the value from the operations.
Here in front of you, you see the web page that is the start of this web-based cost calculator. Here we will be passing through all the sections that you need to go through to be able to obtain an overview of your costs and all your other input needed for calculating your business case. This website uses different variables that you have to fill in or that can be filled in to be able to come to the values that you will later be able to download. The screens all have their input values already filled in for you. These input values come from our pilot site from Sidoarjo, Indonesia. And there we have gathered data on all these values to be able to give you a good idea of what kind of values you can expect. I will be passing through this input value schemes, these web pages with you, and will be guiding you through the options that you can fill in and the eventual output that you will receive after filling in all the values. So first we start with the first of 3 pages with input values. This page is called the business unit. In the business unit, all values that relate to your business case in terms of inputs and outputs are covered. We start first with the input on the amount in kilograms of waste per day that you are going to treat. Here you fill in how much waste you expect to treat in kilograms. Then you fill in the dry matter of the substrate in percentage. Dry matter of the substrate, as mentioned to you in the chapter on BSFL conversion, relates to the water content of the substrate. The lower the water content, the easier the substrate dries out. But if the water content is too low, the substrate will not be able to be converted by the larvae. The dry matter, which is then the fraction of dry material in the substrate, needs to be at least 20 to 30%. This is the ideal ratio. For now, we have put this value at 25% to be able to give you a good average. Then we go to the conversion of waste into BSFL in percentage. This value describes what you can expect in terms of black soldier fly larvae biomass to come out of the waste in percentage. So, for example, right now it says 15%. If you treat 1,000 kilograms of waste, you can expect 150 kilograms of black soldier fly larvae biomass to come out of your system. We put this as 50% because this is about the average that we see from different waste streams that we have received. Most of the waste streams, most of the biowaste streams produce about 10 to 20% of black soldier fly larvae. The fourth unit is the conversion of waste into compost. This value describes the amount of residue that is produced and processed into compost. So again, as this example, from 1,000 kilograms of waste, you can expect about 400 kilograms of compost to come out. This value was obtained as well from our pilot site. The fifth value is the fresh black soldier fly larvae sold per day. Here you fill in the expected percentage of the output material that you are planning to sell live, meaning to local fish farmers or to local chicken farmers, or you even might use that yourself at your site. Right now this says 20%, meaning 20% of the output of black soldier fly larvae is sold live per day. In this case, it would be 50% of 1,000, meaning 150 kilograms, and then 20% of this 150 kilograms, so 30 kilograms. The sixth value here are the microwave dried BSFL per day, meaning this is the percentage of the remaining live larvae, so minus the 20% that's already been sold, that is going to be dried using a microwave oven. You've learned about the process in the post-processing chapter. Here it says 50% is dried using a microwave, which means 150 kilograms minus 30 kilograms, which is 120 kilograms, and 50% of this. So in this case study, 60 kilograms of BSFL will be dried using a microwave. The seventh value are the rotary dried BSFL. This is a different technology to dry your black soldier fly larvae, which you've also learned about in the post-processing chapter. Here, as with the microwave dried larvae, 50% is dried using this system, which means another 60 kilograms. You can vary these numbers, meaning that you can decide however you want to dry your larvae. If in your case it's better to dry the larvae using a microwave, you can set this value to 100%. Or if it's better to rotary dry your BSFL, you can set this value to 100%. Then there are two values, microwave dried larvae pressed per day and rotary dried larvae pressed per day, which indicates then what percentage of the larvae which have been dried using the two different systems are then further processed by fractioning them, which you've also learned about in the post-processing chapter. In this example, we say that 0% of the dried larvae using a microwave system are further processed and pressed, meaning that all the 60 kilograms of larvae that have been microwave dried are sold as dried larvae. And in the case of the rotary dried larvae, all the larvae that come out of the rotary dryer are then further pressed. We move on to the next page. Here, we look at the operational cost. These include all the costs which will be reoccurring at your site. You see that there are quite many options available for cost inputs here. We start here by the used space building in percentage. This value lets you decide what space in your building is used by the equipment that you use there. In this case, we put 30%. This value then means that 30% of your building will be occupied by equipment, which means that 70% will be space used for walking paths. We understand that this is quite a difficult value for you to estimate before you start your site. And that's why, again, we have put the value 30 here, which is the value that we found at our pilot site. The next value might be easier for you to estimate. It's the amount of US dollar per square meter per year for the cost of rent or building for land and the construction. Right now, what is filled in here is $10 per square meter per year. So this would be the rent for the land and the building, or maybe in case of you purchasing the land and the building, you can calculate the depreciation for the meters squared per year. The third value that you can fill in is the amount of US dollar paid per kilogram of nursery feed. In our case, as mentioned in the rearing chapter, this is chicken feed, but you can use any other material that you seem fit for as nursery feed. Here we pay $50 per kilogram of nursery feed. The fourth option that you can add a value for are the bulk materials. We explained to you in the BSFL conversion chapter that if your waste material is too wet, you can add a bulk material to dry out your substrate. Here you can fill in what the cost of per kilogram of this bulk material is. Then in the option 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, you will find values for US dollar per kilowatt of energy, of electricity, US dollar per kilogram of LPG or liquefied petroleum gas, US dollar per liter of diesel fuel, US dollar per cubic meter of water, and US dollar per kilogram of sand. You might not have to use all these operational costs or all these utilities, but we have put them in here so that you can make a selection. If you don't use them, you can keep the value at 0. Then the last two options are salaries. We have differentiated between two types of salaries. The first one is a salary for a supervisor, and the second one a salary for an operator. Of course, the supervisor salary is a little bit higher because more educational background is required, as well as more experience. The operator salary is a little bit lower. We place these values as averages of what we have seen at our site and at sites in the Southeast Asian region. But you can, of course, change these values with the value that you want to use. We have not included any salaries here for managers, financial staff, administration staff, lab assistants, and other jobs that might be required to have people for at the site, because we want to focus here purely on the operation, and it is a bit difficult to estimate salaries of these other jobs, as salary levels for these positions vary a lot. We move on to the third and last inputs page. This input page concerns with all conversion values. Before I start explaining you all the different sections here, I must mention that it's very difficult, again, for you, without having any experience in rearing or treating waste using black soldier flies, to fill in these values. And that's why, as well as with the other three pages that we went through, all values are already pre-selected here, based on results from our pilot site. First of all, we need to fill in here the number of eggs that you can expect per fly. So not per female, but per fly. Again, here we found that we receive around 250 eggs per fly. Then we go to the hatching rate of eggs. This is the amount of eggs that you can expect. This is the amount of 5-day-old larvae that you can expect that come out of the eggs. Currently, we filled in around 60%, meaning that 60% of the eggs hatch into 5-day-old larvae. We go to the third conversion unit. It's the transformation rate of the black soldier fly larvae. This means this is the amount of black soldier fly larvae that have placed into the nursery larvae from their 5-day-old age that transform into prepupae, meaning that prepupae have crawled out of the units. You remember from the BSF rearing chapter that some of the prepupae stay in the units, or they are too late to transform from larvae into prepupae, and therefore this percentage is around 85%. The fourth option is the emergence rate of the pupae. This means this is the amount of flies that you can expect to come out of a number of pupae. So if you place 1,000 prepupae into a dark cage where they have already transformed into pupae, you can expect around 800 flies to emerge from this. Then the following 5 conversion values are based on the processing, the post-processing operations. First of all, sanitized larvae from fresh BSFL. This means the amount of the percentage in weight of sanitized larvae you can expect from fresh larvae. And this is usually 100% because not much material is lost here. Then we have dried larvae from sanitized larvae. Here we give you the value, again, an average at our pilot site, of the sanitized larvae as a percentage of the dried larvae. So it means that from 100 kilograms of sanitized larvae, you can expect 27 kilograms of dried larvae to come out. Then we have a value which mentioned the press cake from dried BSFL. This means that you can expect 73% in weight of the press cake compared to what the weight was of the dried larvae, the dried BSFL. Here is the crude fat from dried BSFL. This percentage explains how much crude fat you can extract from the dried BSFL. You can see here that if you add these numbers up, you almost get to 100. There is a little bit of loss here because some of the material stays in the machine and some of the material is still evaporated due to the heat, which was explained to you in the post-processing chapter. The last value that you can fill in here is the amount of meal that you can expect to take out of the press cake. Here, there is a loss of on average 2%. That's due to some material remaining in the grinder unit. So when we then click on the calculate button, the model, the web-based cost model, will calculate for you the outputs of the values that you have filled in. And that output you see now in front of you in this flowchart. Let's dig in a little bit. First of all, on the top, you see two buttons again. You don't need to click on them directly. They're for exporting the Excel file that is the basis of this model, where you can then later fill in all the values and change all the values yourself. It's an Excel model where you can see all the values that have been filled in these 3 pages that you went through in combination with all the outputs. And then the second button is the option to export this flowchart that you see in front of you as a JPEG file. So you can, for example, use it in a PowerPoint presentation to pitch to possible investors or to other interested parties. Now let's dig into the flow model. So first of all, you can see all the components that we have been discussing throughout this e-learning video series on black soldier fly biowaste processing. So first of all, the nursery, which we covered in the BSF rearing process, the waste conversion unit, including the pre-processing, treatment, and harvesting, sanitizing unit, microwave drying, roasting, fractioning, which were all included in the post-processing chapter. And lastly, we have 5 units where output products of this process are covered. Now, you can see for each component that it shows a CapEx, an OpEx, a space, and labor requirement. So the CapEx and OpEx are calculated based on the amount of waste that you have added and the different parameters that you have filled in. What we mentioned in the last in the last pages is that the space is then calculated as by the function of the amount of equipment and the space that it takes in the building. So for example, for this nursery, the space usage is 47 square meters. And then the labor is the number of people, operators and or supervisors that are required in this process. In this case, 2 people. Now we go to the waste conversion unit and you can see the 4 same values coming out: CapEx, OpEx, space, and labor. In this case, the CapEx and OpEx costs are presented US dollar, like per year, as with the nursery, and the space here 160 square meters, and the labor 3 persons. We go to the sanitizing unit, find the same values: microwave drying, roasting, fractioning, find the same units. Now, what is interesting about this flowchart is mainly the output values here. So what it does, it tells you what amount you are expected to produce per year based on the amount of waste that comes in and the various conversion values that you have filled in. And more interestingly, it tells you the cost per unit of production. So the production cost per unit that has gone into producing this. This means that as you have selected this product, if you sell this product at a price which is higher than the cost per unit, that additional price is a profit. Of course, we have to notify, as we mentioned before, that some costs are not included. For example, salary cost of administration staff, sales staff, management staff. So this has to still be included. But for the raw operational cost, this is the value that you can find per unit. So we have these 5 products here that we expect to produce: compost, fresh larvae, dried larvae, meal, and oil. Now, you might notice that for the compost, there is no cost per kilogram. And this is because in the model, we don't focus on adding a cost to compost. And this is mainly because we found through our pilot site and also with local partners that compost does not really have a value. Most of the time you can give it away for free, or you can use it at your site. We mentioned some uses in our rearing unit, but it doesn't really have a value for sale. This of course can change it of course can change in your situation, and therefore there is still an option to add a value for compost in the model. Now, then the second one is the fresh larvae. Here we see that because we filled in that 20% of the fresh larvae are sold live, so they are not further processed, we are producing almost 61 tons per year. And the cost per kilogram of products produced is $0.85 per kilogram, meaning that if you, for example, are able to sell your larvae at $1 per kilogram, you are covering the operational cost, and there is an additional margin that you get. Then we go to the dried larvae. As mentioned, there are 2 options that we covered: microwave dried larvae and roasted larvae. So we said that for both we would have a 50-50 option, which you can see back here. This is the amount that you chose. So for the microwave dried larvae, we produce 6.57 tons per year with a cost of $5.71 per kilogram. For the roasted larvae, obviously we produce the same amount, but with a little bit of a lower cost due to different operational costs for the roasting the larvae. So the eventual cost come to $5.4 per kilogram. Then we have 2 products which are then a further processing of the dried larvae, which are the meal and the oil. So for the meal, we're producing 4.7 tons per year at a cost of $6.44 per kilogram. And for the oil, we produce 1.5 tons per year at a cost of $6.4 per kilogram. We've almost come to the end of this module on the cost model. Here's the Q&A refresher. First question: why are the input value options presented in this model already filled in? They are filled in because not all data might be available to the user of the model. The data filled in comes from our pilot site. Second question: what does use spaced building in percentage stand for? It stands for the amount of space used by the equipment in relation to the total space available in the building.
We have already come to the end of this module on the web-based cost model. In this module, we looked at the web-based cost model as a simple tool to analyze the cost price per unit, and you learned about how to fill it in. The tool is looking only at the operational cost, so it does not include the administration cost, marketing cost, and the sales cost. The output of the model can be used in a presentation, and more details on the model can be found through exporting the Excel file. Thank you for watching this module, part of the e-learning video series on BSF Biowaste Processing. More information can be found in the BSF step-by-step guide, which you can download through the QR code here. Both of these materials were part of the Forward project by EWAC, in collaboration with the Ministry of Public Works in Indonesia and funded by SECO, the Swiss State Secretariat for Economic Affairs.